Avian flu, candidate for terror weapon. This was the headline of the Globe and Mail in Canada on March 8, 2005. An article by Helen Bramswell. The military's intelligence arm has warned the federal government, that's the Canadian federal government, that avian influenza could be used as a weapon of bioterrorism, a heavily censored report suggests. The report, entitled Recent Human Outbreaks of Avian Influenza and Potential Biological Warfare Implications, was obtained by the Access to Information Act by the Canadian Press. It was prepared by the J2 Directorate of Strategic Intelligence, a secretive branch of the Canadian National Defence, which produces intelligence reports for the government. The report outlines in broad terms the methods that would be used to develop a man-made strain of avian flu influenza that is capable of triggering a human flu pandemic. Capable of triggering a human flu pandemic. This is part 2 of creating the next pandemic. In part 1, we discussed how the World Health Organization and the Center for Disease Control predict that within the next 10 months there will be a massive pandemic throughout the world of the avian flu influenza. And they bring to mind the 1918 to 1919 Spanish flu influenza, called Spanish flu because of reporting in Spain of the influenza, which swept throughout the world, and 1 billion people, more than half of the world's population at the time, was stricken with the flu, and 40 to 50 million people died. Today, with the avian flu influenza, the reports are that 72 to 76%, almost 3/4 of the people who contract the avian flu influenza die, and it's a horrible death. And this is what the World Health Organization and the Center for Disease Control, and now the Canadians also report, is available to us, is on the timeline. December 8th, 2004, this military report suggests that the avian influenza will be a topic of bioterrorism. In 1982, Jonathan King, a molecular biologist at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, was one of the first people to address the issue of genetic engineering and the military. And Leonard Cole speaks of this in his excellent book, Clouds of Secrecy, to which Ralph refers over and again. At a symposium at the American Association for the Advancement of Science, he produced an article called The Threat of Biological Weapons. And he spoke of the use of anthrax in Sverdlovsk in 1979 and the yellow rain that was being used in Afghanistan and Southeast Asia. What was noted by King is that the U.S. Army incorporated already recombinant DNA research into its program. In 1980, the Army was bold enough to advertise in Science magazine for proposals on the quote, on the introduction of recombinant DNA methods for the human nervous system gene of acetylcholinesterase from human neuroblastoma cells into a bacterium. The purpose of the research is to obtain a microorganism that synthesizes the human enzyme so that it can be isolated for biochemical, neurochemical, and pharmacological purposes. And the proposals were sent to none other than the U.S. Army Research and Development Command, that's the U.S. AMRID at Fort Detrick, Maryland.
And that leads us to the following. The very mysterious deaths of 5 microbiologists, the report by Ian Gurney. It is a story worthy of a major conspiracy theory, the script for Mel Gibson whodunit, or a blueprint for an episode of The X-Files, except that the facts surrounding the story are just that, facts. 5 eminent microbiologists, leaders in their fields of scientific research, have been found dead or are missing in the last 8 weeks, and a bizarre connection between the dead scientists and the mystery surrounding the death by anthrax inhalation of hospital workers in New York. Over the past week, several world-acclaimed scientific researchers specializing in infectious diseases and biological agents such as anthrax and DNA sequencing have been found dead or have gone missing. On November 12th, Dr. Benito K., a cell biologist working on infections, diseases like HIV, was found dead outside his laboratory in the Miami Medical School. The incident, whatever it may have been, occurred on Monday afternoon as the scientist left his job at the University of Miami School of Medicine. The word among his friends is that 4 men armed with a baseball bat attacked him at his car. Within 1 week of Dr. Key's assault, Dr. Don C. Wiley, one of the United States' foremost infectious disease researchers, was declared missing. Bill Poovey, the journalist with Associated Press, writes, his rental car was found with a full tank of petrol and the keys in the ignition. His disappearance looked like a suicide, but according to colleagues in Dr. Wiley's family, the Harvard scientist associated with the Howard Hughes Medical Institute would never have committed suicide. Associates who attended the St. Jude's Children Research Advisory dinner with Dr. Wiley hours before stated he was in good spirits. He had never been depressed. He was seen at the banquet at the Peabody Hotel in downtown Memphis the night he vanished. Those who saw him last say he showed no signs of a man contemplating his death. He left the hotel around midnight. The bridge where his car was found is a 5-minute drive away, in the wrong direction from where he was stating, leaving authorities with a 4-hour unexplained gap until his vehicle was found. Dr. Wiley was an expert on how the human immune system can fight off infections and was investigating dangerous viruses such as AIDS, Ebola, herpes, and influenza. From the United States, the story moves to England. On November 23rd, Dr. Vladimir Pasechnik, the microbiologist for Biopreparat, the Soviet biological weapons production facility, was found dead. The Times is the only newspaper to provide an obituary for Dr. Pasechnik. The defection to Britain in 1989 of Vladimir Pasechnik revealed to the West a colossal, clandestine biological warfare program. He was immediately incorporated in biological agent preparation such as anthrax, plague, tularemia, and smallpox. After his defection, he worked for 10 years at the United Kingdom's Department for Applied Microbiology Research, and he then formed his own company, Regma Biotechnics. In the last few weeks of his life, his research on anthrax was placed at the disposal of the government. Back in the United States, Dr. Robert M. Schwartz was found murdered in Leesburg, Virginia. The well-known DNA sequencing researcher had founded the Virginia Biotechnology Association, where he was working on DNA sequencing for 15 years. On December 12th, the Washington Post reports, a well-known biophysicist, one of the leading researchers on DNA sequencing analysis, is found slain in his rural Loudoun County home after co-workers became concerned when he didn't arrive. A founding member of the Biotechnology Association, Loudoun Sheriff stated that Schwartz had been stabbed. On December 14th, a skilled microbiologist at Victoria State, Australia, killed at the Commonwealth Scientific and Industrial Research Organization. Similar work. Australian scientists Dr. Ron Jackson, Dr. Ian Ramshaw, who were engaged in promoting an astonishingly virulent strain of mouse pox, a cousin of smallpox among laboratory mouse. They realized that a similar genetic manipulation was carried out on smallpox, an unstoppable killer. The microbiologist Seth Van Gien had worked for 15 years at the facility, found dead. Appeared to have died after entering an airlock in a storage laboratory filled with nitrogen. So what we are witnessing here, and there are more microbiologists to cite, is the disappearance and the murder of those who have been working on these government programs. We cannot state what they were prepared to reveal, whether they were considered unreliable, whether they were having doubts about the uses of their work.